Hello, Anna, and welcome to Creative Momentum with Meg. Um, can you just begin by introducing yourself and what it is that you do creatively?
Yeah, my name's Anna Woods, and I'm from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, and I am a writer, an author, and my new novel just came out.
Excellent. What's your novel's name?
Lit, sorry, yes, my novel is called Lit. It's out from Echo Publishing.
Excellent, excellent. Can you tell me a little bit about, do you have a routine for your creative work and talk us through that?
Yeah, so my routine's a little bit different. My husband thinks it's hilarious because the way that I draft is I have to wait until everyone's gone to bed. I turn all the lights off in my house, and I've got like a little book lamp I can show you. It's a little amber reading light so that it's no blue light. And then I attach that to my notebook and I write longhand with my mechanical pencil. So that's the way I draft. And I find being in that kind of liminal space between waking and sleeping, it's just more, your little inner editor shuts down and it's just easier to write without censoring yourself. I find that in the morning is good too, but I just with life commitments, family, I don't have time to do it in the morning. So the evenings are when I do that. And then in terms of the next day, when I have time in between my work and family commitments, I'll type up what I've written. And when I'm editing, I can do that during the day at my computer. But for writing new words, for drafting, I really have to have that little nighttime routine.
And are you doing that every night, or is it just, a couple of nights a week, or do you have
Most
a routine or?
Well, it's most nights when I'm writing a first draft. So when I'm not writing, like once I've finished the first draft and I'm working on revision, sometimes I'll print out and revise at night with my red pen. But yeah, it's when I'm writing new words because I'm the type of writer that I find that it's hardest to get the words on the page. Once they're
Mhm.
there, I can edit them and change them, but it's actually drawing them out and actually getting them outside of myself, outside of my brain, and onto the page. That's the part I struggle with. So, yeah, that's where I really do it every night. And then once I'm out of that phase, I can sort of let it go a little bit.
Tell me, what is your routine like once you're out of your first draft stage?
Yeah, so once I'm out of the first draft, then I will. I work from home, and my husband and I have a small business, so I work in that. So I can kind of fit it around when I need to. So when the kids are at school, so in the morning I'll get up and I'll do the usual exercise, get the kids off to school, walk the dog, and then I'll come home and try and do. I try to do my creative work first because I find that yeah, once you get towards the end of the day, your emotional and creative energy is depleted.
Mhm.
So I'll do that. I'll work for a few hours if I have the time, have lunch, and then try and do more admin type tasks in the afternoon. Although I do find quite often I'll pick up something at about 4:30, right before I have to cook dinner, which is the worst possible time, and I'll get really deep into something, and then I have to drag myself away to cook dinner. So there's something about that sort of late or sorry early evening late afternoon time that I also find quite creative, but yeah, it's just about finding those times in between all the other commitments.
Mhm. Um, can you talk us through a bit about what your creative process is for a story? So you start, you've kind of talked about it a little bit where you start first draft is handwritten, long form. How do you go from that set of an idea right through to that complete finished? It's good to go, good to send somewhere.
Yeah. So with that, I find I'm a bit of a discovery writer, so I don't know. I don't have. I'd love to have an outline. I'd love to be a plotter because I think it's a much more efficient way to work. But I don't. I don't have that capability to discover the story. I have to write it. I can't do it in my head. And so what I find I do is I will read back as I'm drafting. I'll read back and this is where typing up the first draft really helps because it's kind of that first pass editing. So you're kind of looking at the story again and going, oh, okay, so this part might be missing, and so I'll kind of do a reverse outline as I'm drafting. And then once I have the basic structure of the story, then I'll look at it and see, well, what's missing. And I'll write myself little notes. I've got little post-it notes that I stick everywhere of scenes that I need to write because they're missing, or I need to connect a certain scene to something that's happening later, or yeah, I mean, if I change something in the drafting and I have to go back because this new character has entered or something like that.
Do you, so you're typing out from your notebook. If you go, oh, actually, there's a scene missing, I need to talk more about this. Do you have to go back to the handwriting, or you feel free enough by that stage to just type it straight in?
No, yeah, I go back and handwrite it. So quite often in the evening when I don't know what to write, because I won't always sit down going, okay, I know what I'm gonna write tonight, or I don't write it necessarily chronologically. I have
Mm.
a little list on the inside of my notebook of
Mm.
scenes that I need to write or things that I need to sort of bring in. And so that kind of gives me something to go on or something to start with. And so then I'll start writing that scene and then I'll have to go back when I go to type it out and see whereabouts in the document that might live, whereabouts it makes most sense. So yeah, it's I guess it sort of grows forward, but then it's also sort of branching out as I'm writing. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, is this the first novel you've written, or first manuscript?
No, so I've written a few manuscripts, as many of your writers have. Yeah, I've written a few manuscripts that have not been published, and I suppose I've changed the process over time as I've learned what works for me and what works for the story. I think what happened in the past is I actually came from short story writing. So I was trying to write novels as though they were long short stories, just a very long short story, which doesn't really work. And so it wasn't really until I hit on a process that worked for me that I could expand all of the subplots of a novel. So I think what was happening is I was having this like really long short story that didn't have enough other strands to it. And so this kind of method of drafting has helped me see, like I said, where the gaps are and build out other storylines and make it a more cohesive, um, more cohesive whole. And then also I think part of that is the way that I use Scrivener to draft, and I think that's really helped my process because I can see it all at once. So I can see all the individual scenes where they're happening, and you kind of just get that overview, which makes it much easier for me to see the novel as a whole because I can hold a whole short story in my head. It's 3,000, 5,000 words, whatever it is. I can't hold 85,000 words in my head. It's not that big. So I need some sort of bird's eye view or sort of see that macro level, and then I can kind of understand the story, and that's when I can start building it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So is that happening like between draft two and three? Let's say draft one is your notebook.
Yeah.
Draft two is when you type it into Scrivener. And so between two and three is when you're going, hang on, is this hanging together?
Yeah.
What's missing?
And then I also will use, I know that Scrivener can do this, but I will also use Excel and I will sit there and
Mm.
make a little spreadsheet of, particularly for lit because it is a suspense novel, there's certain things are revealed at certain times. And so in order for the timeline to make sense, also there's a little element of someone being missing. So, when they went missing to when something else happens, there's a certain time period has to elapse. And so just to make sure that the scenes were working with the chronological timeline of the novel, that was important for me to be able to sort of see it all over, an overview all at once. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you've probably heard me bang on about how much I love a spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Sophie
yeah.
and I may have talked at length about spreadsheets.
I love that episode, yes.
And I love that you're using it for the timeline. And in fact, I was just talking to someone on the weekend about how great it is for doing the timeline stuff, because then you can see very clearly when and where things need to happen.
Yeah.
Um, I want you to talk me through a little bit about like where do you get your ideas from? So we know that this wasn't the first story you've written, and you know, do the ideas come to you as an image or something someone said, or like is what inspires your creative work?
So for me, it very much comes from reading other books. So like I'll read a book that I see something interesting in or that I enjoy, and I think, oh, how did the author do that? And then I kind of wonder how I could do something like that or something different, how I could put a spin on it. And then I also have, you know, little, as you do, like little ideas pop into your head. What about a story about this? Or, you hear something or you see something. I don't have a, so I don't have a really strong visual image in my head, so I'm not one of these people that has a movie playing. I hear writers talk about, oh, there's just a movie playing in my head, and I write it down, and I think, oh, that's amazing. I'd love that because you could just sit there and basically it's being dictated to you, and you just. I'm not like that at all. So it's never images that come to me. It's I guess it's more experiences. So for lit, what happened was I was driving to work one day and I spotted someone who had passed away. And that's something that's quite common for people when you lose someone, your brain sort of looks for patterns and it looks to recognize the
Mm.
person. But this resemblance was so striking. I kind of did a double take and then I kind of did another one. And I just thought, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if this person hadn't really disappeared? Sorry, hadn't really died, but they disappeared and were living some sort of secret life. I was like, oh, that's an interesting idea for a story. So that was just sort of percolating away. And at the same time, I was reading Clarissa by Samuel Richardson, which is a classic novel about gaslighting. And so the villain in that um, he is just a real rake and he ruins, it's one of those Victorian type literature, ruins this lady called Clarissa. And so I was like, I wonder if, what would that be like in a contemporary setting where she is got more agency and where she's got, yeah, more control over her own life. And so I kind of brought those two things together. So yeah, it's very much about reading and just noticing things that are affecting me in my life or that I see out and about. Yeah.
Mm. And for the other things that you've written over time, is it the same thing? It's just like you keep noticing something, you're like, I need to explore this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so the novel that I wrote for, so I did a Master of Creative Writing, and the novel I wrote for that was um, an epistolary novel, and so that was inspired by letters, and then it was kind of what if the what if the character wasn't writing a letter to someone that was around? What if it was to someone that was missing? I don't know why I have all these missing people going on in my novels, but um, and so that one was very much again, it was another novel that I'd read. I'm struggling to recall what it was, but that had kind of I thought, oh, it's interesting writing a novel in letters. How could I work with that as a starting point for a story? So yeah, I think they've all. I mean, and then I had very early novels that I wrote, very terrible ones that I wrote in my 20s were more of the kind of autobiographical first novel where you just mine your own life. But I think I'm quite fortunate, I think, in that those didn't get published and I kind of got that out of my system and now I can work on more purely fiction. Though, of course, your life always comes into your stories.
Yeah. I remember years ago when I don't know, I was attending the neighborhood house writing group, and I thought I'm just going to get all of that autobiographical stuff out, and I was just thought I'm just going to purge it out while I'm in this class because I don't want it to come into things that I'm writing about.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell me, what fills your cup creatively? Like what fills you back up?
Yeah, like I said, I think reading definitely,
Mm, mm,
because I love hearing other voices and other stories, and particularly I've got a real thing for memoir. I love reading memoir and I love listening to, I don't listen to many audiobooks, but the ones I do are memoirs that are narrated by the author because I think there's
Mm,
something so compelling about hearing someone's story told in their own words, in their own voice. But then there's also the usual things of, getting out in nature, going for a walk, going to art galleries, consuming other types of art, movies, films, just being out in the world. I think you really need to be out and experiencing life because otherwise your view becomes quite narrow. And, there's this whole thing of writers writing about writing, which is kind of interesting, I think, to us. And I enjoy writing books. So I enjoy reading books about writing, but I think to speak to a broad section of people, you really need to be experiencing other aspects of life and talking about other aspects of life. So, yeah, I think it's really important to just get out there and experience things.
I think that is so true. Tell me, if you were to be having a chat with someone who is, thinking about doing some writing or doing some other creative work, or it maybe is at a kind of stagnant point or, transitioning in their creative work, what what wisdom would you want to share with them?
I think it's about perseverance, really, because the people that kind of have the breakthroughs are the people that keep going. And so I think that and you see it time and again in all creative industries, is there's a tendency to give up at the first hurdle, and that doesn't, I mean, those hurdles are about learning and getting better. Like I said earlier, if my first novel had been published, it was, it was terrible, and I don't. If I'd given up after writing that novel, then I wouldn't be here today. So, I think not every piece of work you're going to do is going to be something that you're really wanting to put out into the world, but that doesn't mean you should stop working. So I think it's just, yeah, perseverance, keep going, and yeah, having that focus and having that determination to make it through.
Mhm, mhm. It's, I mean, it's classic advice, but we need to keep hearing it, don't we? Just,
Yeah,
keep going, um, because it's so easy to give up, especially when no one knows about what you're writing.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was the Women's Prize recently, and the correspondent obviously won, and she said that she'd written 9 novels before that
Mm,
got published, and now look at how massive it is. So, I know of a lot of writers that gave up after their first book didn't get published, and I think and it's understandable because the rejection is really hard, and you do question whether what you're doing is something that people want to read. But I think with every rejection you get better, and I think that holds across all art forms. Yeah.
I agree. And I think with my first manuscript that got rejected, I only got rejected by 2 people, but I was so fragile then that I was like, oh, that's it. That one is definitely the bottom drawer one. And, I've just got to try and, dig deep and write something else. But, we are fragile and we do have to kind of pick ourselves up. I'm going to pop a link to this in the show notes. Someone sent me a link to a conversation between Anne Patchett and Virginia Evans. Yeah, because they wrote to each other for a long time before the correspondent was even picked up.
Wow.
Mm, yeah,
It's
and
she got the idea of writing to famous authors because obviously that's in the
yeah,
novel.
well, yeah, and Anne's like, and then she put my shop address in there. But like Anne's like, I just kept saying to her, you go, girl.
Hmm.
Because she didn't think that, she didn't know that she was going to have this amazing novel that has just, I've read it. I loved it. I did have to write to the publisher because 10 pages fell out as soon as I opened it. So that gave me an excuse to write a letter. So thanks, Virginia Evans.
Yeah. Good.
Can you tell me what what feels like home for your creative work and for you?
So I have a real thing about quiet. So it's not so much where I am, but the place has to be quiet. So I know a lot of writers enjoy writing in coffee shops and libraries because there's kind of that white noise. But I can't listen to music. I can't have um, any distractions. I'm very easily distracted. And so the few times that I've had the opportunity to go on a writer's retreat, that's when I've been the most productive. So it's not that I'm home in my home that I live in, but I'm home in that space of quiet where I can access the part of me that is able to come up with the stories. So yeah, I really need that quiet space to be able to do my work.
Mm, I love that because I also need quiet. I've been known to sit with headphones on that have got nothing playing.
Noise
Just
cancelling. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard writers talk about, the playlists that they write to, and I can't comprehend this idea of having lyrics, especially. Like I can kind of understand having music with no lyrics, but when you're having words coming in your ear and you're trying to write different words, I don't know, my brain doesn't work that way.
yeah, no, I'm the same. It has to be, instrumental.
Yeah.
And if I am listening to music alongside, it has to kind of fit the theme of what it is that I'm writing as well. Thank you so much, Anna, for coming on to Creative Momentum with Meg and for sharing your creative process and whatnot. Uh, are you writing another kind of suspense book now?
I am, yes. So I'm writing another suspense book. This one is set in the art world. So the main character is a performance artist, and that is proving to be so interesting. And so that's what I was saying about visiting art galleries. And yeah, the research for this has been just wild, some of the stuff they do. So yeah, hopefully that one will make its way into the world soon.
Yeah. And for listeners who are like, hang on, she has a New Zealand accent. Is
Yeah.
she Australian? This is
Yeah.
the home season. Uh, Tell me your connection to Australia. Also, like Australians consider New Zealanders like our other state anyway, over the
Well, that's
ditch.
this is true over the ditch. Well, my husband and my children are all Australian citizens. My husband's Australian. He's from Melbourne. Um, he's a big Carlton supporter, so that's not so great for us. I don't follow the AFL, but apparently they're not doing so well. And yeah, so we're in Australia frequently, visiting his family, and yeah, so I've got a great connection to Australia. We actually lived there for a time as well before we were dragged over the ditch by a job. So yeah,
And your book was published in Australia as
yes, I should
well.
mention that too. Yes, so
Yeah.
Echo's an independent publisher in Australia, and it's available in all Australian bookshop stores, independents, and in the big chains as well. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming along. I have really enjoyed hearing about your work and I'm going to say I know quite a few writers who start with the handwriting
Mm.
in a notebook, and it is actually making me consider what that how useful that can be because I think it's a less critical eye we have on our writing, maybe.
I've found it's a different voice. So I've found the words you choose are different. And I don't know why that is, but I can tell the difference between something I've written by hand and something I've written on a screen. So I prefer it. And it's also a good way of unlocking when you're stuck. Yeah.